Woodstock, one of the world's most famous music festivals, a cornerstone of the counterculture generation, 3 days of love, peace and music. Whilst there's been many iterations of Woodstock, we're going to go back in time and have a look at its history, in brief anyway, and look at the more chaotic side of what made Woodstock so infamous, all the way back to the original festival and through some of the more later iterations to get to where we are today. So, this is Woodstock. Hello! Welcome to Brainspill, the laziest show on the internet. My name is Tank, and for anyone that knows me, I would happily throw my hard-earned money at some music festival so I can go and stand in a rainy field for 5 days with a cold pint in my hand and listen to some random band play music that I've never heard of before. That sounds like a great time. So yeah, music festivals are great, so why not talk about one of the world's most well-known and most infamous festivals of all, Woodstock. Just a quick history lesson, Woodstock Music and Art Fair, commonly referred to as just Woodstock, was a music festival held between the 15th and the 18th of August 1969. On a dairy farm in Bethel, New York, 32 musical acts played the 3-day festival to the delight of music fans. Despite the rain that came down, it was considered an important moment in music history. The weekend had acts such as The Who, The Grateful Dead, Jimi Hendrix and Santana. This hippie free-loving movement was in direct contradiction to much of the world's politics at the time in the late 60s and early 70s, including the fact that the United States were involved in a very controversial war in Vietnam. Yes, like I said, there was a lot going on in the world at the time, and this just had such a cultural impact and was really an important moment in musical history. Hundreds of thousands of people gathered on this one farm to enjoy a weekend of music. Well, I'd be lying if I said that it was all sunshines and rainbows. As a matter of fact, more people remember this festival because of how chaotic it was than the actual fact that there was bands and music playing there for 3 days. Given the fact that the festival was called Woodstock, it wasn't even held in the town of Woodstock. It was held in the next town over due to the fact that Woodstock wouldn't issue the festival organisers a permit for their festival. That's where a 49-year-old dairy farmer called Max Yazga granted them access to his 600-acre farm to put on the musical event of a lifetime. So yeah, this all sounds cool. They have a nice place for a fun festival. And originally they charged $18 a ticket, and they estimated about 50,000 people would turn up. That's not quite what happened, because by the time the festival was starting, they hadn't quite managed to put all the fencing up, meaning that thousands of ticketless punters arrived and walked straight into the festival without paying a penny. So things got busy pretty quickly. So yeah, no wonder festival security these days is so high. You have these big festivals these days that erect giant walls and fences that are impossible to climb to try and prevent the fact that if many people come when it's being unaccounted for, health and safety is a big issue. It is estimated that the festival had an additional 200,000 people enter the festival without purchasing a ticket and being unaccounted for. In the end, it was estimated that there may have been upwards of 500,000 people in the festival site. That is a lot of people. This mass of people resulted in there being approximately 800 people to every toilet on site, causing huge queues, backlogs in the sewage on site, and created even more mud on an already rainy festival weekend. Food vendors would run up food prices and even looked at price gouging to quadruple the price of a hot dog. Festival goers, upset by this capitalist greed, resorted to burning down the tents that decided to try and do this. And yes, aside from the music, this is the kind of place that you would fully expect drugs, sex and rock and roll. And I can assure you that particularly the drugs was quite a prominent factor, as I can't imagine many places where more narcotics weren't taken in a single weekend than ever before. Things started getting so out of hand, in fact, that over the intercoms, the festival organisers even had to ask people nicely to get down from the poles they were climbing due to the fact that there were risks of lightning strikes. So that would probably have not gone down well if a festival punter got shocked by lightning on site. I've been to festivals before, I've been to some pretty crazy ones, but nothing quite like this. The festival did also have a darker side as well. The rampant drug use resulted in the deaths of 3 people at the festival, 2 of which were presumed by overdose, and another who was crushed by a tractor whilst they were sleeping. Truly awful. Nobody wants to hear this sort of thing happen in a place where this is meant to be such carefree and a fun-loving weekend. The event was chaotic, but the chaos also made it iconic, and it ended up being the subject of a feature-length documentary the following year in 1970, simply named Woodstock, which captured the very spirit and the highlights of the performances that weekend. When the following year came round, owner of the farm, Max Yuzga, refused to allow a revival of the festival, stating that as far as he was concerned, he was going to go back and run his farm as a dairy farm. And you know what, with everything that happened the year before, I kinda don't blame the guy. If it was me, I'd just want to go back and be a dairy farmer. You know, go back to the simple life. Approximately 80 lawsuits were filed against Woodstock Ventures, who set up and ran the festival, primarily by farmers in the area. The documentary that was made financed many of the settlements and paid out approximately $1.4 million of debt, which is approximately $10.3 million today. This was an expensive venture which almost financially ruined the organisers, and if it wasn't for them asking filmmakers to go and document the whole experience, this could have ended in a very different way. So yeah, whilst Woodstock would never ever be held at the actual original site ever again, this was certainly a pivotal moment and was absolutely a time to remember. As a matter of fact, this place had such a cultural impact that although the festival has never been held there again, in 1984 a monument was set up to commemorate the site of the original festival, which I think is pretty cool. This event was so iconic in fact that music events bearing the Woodstock name were originally planned on anniversaries, which included the 10th, 20th, 25th, 30th, 40th and 50th years. While a number of them never materialised due to the landowner not wanting to return to the festival, among the other financial and legal troubles, I imagine the second iteration of the festival, quote unquote, officially means that this was the 25th anniversary, which was held in 1994. This festival was a bit more established, more prepared and sold tickets at $135, a little bit more corporate than the previous free-spirited mind there was before. And yes, whilst it was much more controlled than before, there were people that still managed to break their way into the event, and whilst it wasn't quite as bad as last time, it was still a prevalent thing. Bands and artists that performed included, at the time, young versions of the Red Hot Chili Peppers, Green Day, Nine Inch Nails, Metallica, Primus and Cypress Hill. People wanted more, and after that, another event was planned and held in the year 1999. And, well, the fact that, of course, the first year was always going to have its problems, the second year seemed to go off a little bit better, surely the third year was going to go off even better. The bar had been set, and they just needed to make it even bigger and better than it ever was before. Problem with that is that expectations are high, and people go to this legendary festival thinking that it's going to be something amazing. Too bad that the 1999 year for Woodstock was infamous for all the wrong reasons. This event was held in upstate New York at a place called Rome, a place about 100 miles from the original festival site. 400,000 people descended across the site for 4 days. Festival organisers erected a giant 12-foot plywood and steel fence to keep people out of the event. But the wall was breached on a Saturday night, where many of the festival goers simply flooded into the site without tickets. This resulted in new state police troopers having to be called in as additional security for the event. There were also a few other issues due to the fact that there was an extreme heatwave going on at the time, and some of the bands that played encouraged the crowd to go a little bit crazier than perhaps they should have done. One band in particular was the performance from Limp Bizkit, where frontman Fred Durst might have said a few things to rile up the crowd, and yes, I know that these concerts are a little bit, jumpy, rocky, moshy, but there's a point where you have to be a little bit careful. I mean, if someone falls down or is going to get injured, you stop. You do not encourage that. But hey, if he's up there and he doesn't see it and he keeps going, who knows what could happen. During the set for the Red Hot Chili Peppers, a vigil was set up during their hit song Under the Bridge, which got out of hand when people started creating bonfires. And after the Chili Peppers were just about finished with their main set, the audience was informed about a bit of a problem that had caused when an audio tower caught fire, and the fire department had to be called to extinguish it. That night would descend into violence, with ATMs being tipped over, burglaries on vendor booths, and there were even reports of sexual violence and harassment, in which the local police had to investigate these after the event. And yes, there was quite a lot of things that did happen. I've kind of gone over it on a very, very surface level here, but the general outcome was that at the end of this festival, it kind of tarnished the reputation of Woodstock. And yes, whilst some smaller iterations of the festival may have come and gone, there wasn't really any more Woodstock after that. That event kind of ruined it for everyone. People have been talking about whether they're going to bring it back, whether it's going to be coming back for a new anniversary. Who knows? Maybe it will, maybe it won't. But all we know is that if we want to go back and look at the previous history, there's a lot to learn here. And whilst it is considered a legendary festival, there's lessons. And I think if they're going to do anything like this again, they need to be very, very prepared. If you like the video, be sure to like and subscribe. If you want to be notified as soon as I upload my next video, be sure to hit the bell button. And if you've got any ideas for what topics you'd like to discuss next, let me know down in the comments below. As always, sources used in the video will be in the description. There was so much to talk about in this video that on the first draft of the script, I even had to go through and cut a lot of it out, because I'd kind of be going over ground that I've already discussed or talking about things which kind of just backs up the same points I've already made. Many instances of just chaos that went on. I'm sure if you're interested, you can go and find out more details about it. And yes, whilst these festivals were quite chaotic in the various iterations it came through, I think it's easy to be a bit blindsided by all that kind of stuff and then forget about what the festival actually was. And I think for the vast majority of people, they will walk away from that weekend with fond memories and a great experience that they'll never forget. The summer of '69, 3 days of peace and music. I'll see you guys in the next video. Fantastic.